All right, I note that to be 7 o'clock. Lots of members of council to come on screen. I note that we are still absent Deputy Mayor. I understand he's trying to connect right now. I'll give it a minute for the Deputy Mayor to come in, but we shall get going. We have quorum, so. Well, I'm sure the Deputy Mayor will join us shortly. At this time, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 42nd session of this council being held virtually this Monday, February the 8th, 2021. There was no closed session scheduled for this evening. Please note that this electronic meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be available on the township website. If there is a problem with the technology impacting the proceedings of the meeting may be recessed at my discretion to confirm that the electronic format is performing effectively before proceeding further with the agenda. If any member of council loses their connection, we will give it a moment and try to get them reconnected, but proceed as long as we have quorum. Right. So moving forward, as I say, there has been no closed session this evening. For open forum, with the meetings being held electronically, we do ask that you contact the clerk no later than 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting to make the necessary arrangements to connect during the open forum. Madam Clerk, is there anyone that has requested open forum this evening?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. Then we will move forward into the public meetings section of the agenda. The first, 4.1, a public meeting regarding Loyalist Country Club Estates Phase 8 zoning bylaw amendment. A public meeting is being held in accordance with the provisions of sections 3412 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 to consider an amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw as amended. The proposed amendment applies to property located in concession 1, part of lot 9, and more specifically known as Country Club Estates Phase 8. Right. The proposed amendment to the Loyalist Township zoning bylaw 2001-38 as amended, if approved, will affect 45 units and upon coming into force and effect will rezone the lands in the residential type 3 exception 20 holding zone, residential type 3 exception 21 holding zone, and residential type 4 exception 13 holding zone to increase the maximum lot coverage to 44% for a single-story detached dwelling house or a single-story semi-detached dwelling house, plus an additional 5% for accessory buildings and structures and associated with a single-story detached or semi-detached dwelling house. We'll ask the planning staff to present a report, after which the applicants or their agent may speak to the report. Then it's open to public. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak either for or against the application, we ask you to raise your hand by pushing the raise hand button in Zoom. And I'll reiterate that at the time. Council may have questions, and then we'll proceed to the recommendations and deliberations. And with that, and the staff have the planning staff present to make a report. Ms. Furness?
Yeah, okay, go. I was going to say,
Oh,
my apologies, Your Worship. Yes, we do have a presentation, or if anybody has questions, Ms. Furness is on.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this zoning bylaw amendment, it applies to the Loyalist Estates Phase 8 subdivision in Bath on the east side of Country Club Drive and north of Main Street. This phase was subject to previous draft plan approval and zoning bylaw amendments. a few years ago. And so this proposed amendment applies to 45 units, which in 3 zones that you just alluded to, in order to increase the maximum lot coverage for single-story detached and semi-detached houses. For the purposes of allowing the developer to meet market demands in established bungalows within the subdivision. The amendment is to permit 44% for a single story and additional 5% for accessory structures. And so the reason we've incorporated the additional 5% for accessory structures is to avoid the house being built up to full lot coverage and then requiring applicants to come in afterwards for variances and so on in order to put a shed or a small deck on their property. We're of the opinion it complies with the provincial policy statement as it adds to the building stock while providing a choice of residential types. In particular, the new PPS speaks to providing market-based housing in a range and mix of residential uses. There's a number of PPS policies related to stormwater management, and as part of this application, we did request a stormwater addendum that was submitted and was shown that there's negligent impact on the storm sewer and the designed storm ponds. There won't be any impacts that way. In terms of the county's official plan and the Loyalist Township official plan, it's in the urban settlement area where growth is directed, that residential uses are permitted. It's in the low density designation, so the bungalows would be permitted as well, and lot coverage doesn't impact any of the density requirements. So we feel that it satisfies the Loyalist and county official plan. And in terms of the zoning bylaw, the only requested change is the increase in lot coverage. Looking at the general building form and scale of the development, we feel the zone change request is reasonable. All other setback requirements to adjacent properties are still applicable, and we feel that the impact on usable amenity space would be very minimal. So we haven't received any, we did receive questions from the public on what the zoning bylaw amendment was about, but we did not receive any comments or correspondence to date on this. So reserving the right after we hear from any public comments, we're of the opinion that it does satisfy the requirements that we look at when reviewing zoning bylaw amendments.
Thank you, Ms. Furness. With that, is there anyone on behalf of the agent or applicants that wish to, applicants or their agent who wishes to speak to this application? Ms. Jones, welcome. Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Ms. Jones.
Sorry, is that better?
Thank you. Yes.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you. I'll be very brief. I think Andrea covered off the points. Essentially, what we are proposing is an increase in lot coverage only for bungalows. So it's only for the single-story dwellings, which have been very popular in Loyalist estates. They certainly meet a market demand there. The intent is, because it's a bungalow, to allow for a little bit more lot coverage, obviously to allow for slightly larger units. This sort of came about, particularly the semi-detached units, which they hadn't built in this portion of Loyalist estates before. So when they were working on the floor plans, recognized that in order to get what they considered to be a reasonable size unit that had 2 bedrooms and a single car garage, that they would need a little bit more lot coverage. So the units that would be permitted would be sort of in the range of 1,575 square feet for the semi-detached bungalows and 1,650 for the singles that are being proposed. So they're sort of a nice size house. We think for the marketplace, there were elevation drawings that were submitted in support of the application and provide council with an indication that we think it's a quality product that will fit well within the neighborhood. So we are asking for council support on the proposed rezoning, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak towards this application? Madam Clerk, is there anyone with a hand up?
I'm not seeing any, Your Worship.
And again, I'll remind the audience, if there is a raise hand button through Zoom if you wish to speak to this. Seeing none, I will turn to council. Do we have any questions with regard to this application? For either the applicant or staff? I see no questions. We're still seeing no hands up. And then I will say thank you to Ms. Furness and Ms. Jones for your presentations, and we'll move to the question at hand. Council, we have a recommendation before us with regard to this application. Okay. Do I have a Councilor Porter? Go ahead.
Yes, I'll move to receive the report and adopt the recommendation.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a motion. Do I have a seconder? I'll take the deputy mayor. Okay. Any comments from the mover?
No.
From the seconder? Anyone else wish to make comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. We move to item 4.2, which is a notice of public meeting. Right. So take notice that the Council of Lawless Township has scheduled a public meeting to consider the adoption of the 2021 budget on Monday, March the 8th at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held virtually and hosted through Zoom. Copies of the 2021 operating and capital budgets are available on the Township webpage via the latest news 2021 budget from the homepage. Any person or organization wishing to speak or to provide input can do so in a number of ways: by completing the feedback form that is currently available on the Township website, by emailing the clerk at loyalist.ca, or by making a verbal presentation by contacting the clerk's office to make arrangements to speak on March the 8th. Right? And again, we ask that you contact the clerk's office as far ahead as possible, preferably before 4 a.m. on the day of the meeting. Right? So that is a notice of motion. Right? We don't need, I believe we don't need a resolution for that, do we, Madam Clerk?
No, your worship, it's just a notice of meeting.
And notice of public meeting. Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, not notice of motion. My
No.
apologies. Okay. With that, moving forward then, right, we go to the confirmation of the agenda. We have the agenda presented before us today. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Councillor Townend, seconded by Councillor Parks. Right, any comments? Call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda is adopted. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? I'll go to Councillor Porter.
Yes, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest on item number 14.1 and item number 14.2, being a neighboring property owner and part owner.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations of pecuniary interest? I see none. Thank you. We'll move forward to the minutes. We have a number of minutes before us. We'll start with 7.1, confirmation of the minutes of the 41st regular session of council, January the 11th. Any noted errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I have a motion? I'll take the deputy as mover, Councillor Townend as second. Any comments from anyone? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have the confirmation of the minutes of the special session of council, January the 25th. And any noted errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Porter. Any comments? Councillor Parks, go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to get your attention, Your Worship. Just a clarification, please, on item 6.2. There was a motion put forward, a resolution put forward by Councillor Bruder, but there was no second on that. I don't know if that's something that's required and just got missed.
Good
More
catch.
housekeeping.
I hadn't noticed that either. We'll ask the clerk to review. And Madam Clerk, would it be appropriate to defer this motion to approve until that's affixed?
We can just put the name in, your worship. If you want to amend, we'll get the name and add to it.
And do we know who the seconder was?
If you want to move it to the bottom, we can get that information.
And thank you. I'd rather have that in there to make the amendment at the time.
Okay.
We'll move, so we can move on to 7.3 and then come back. Thank you. We'll move to 7.3, confirmation of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole budget session, January the 25th. Are there any noted errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve those minutes? I'll take Councillor Buderick, seconded by Councillor Townend. Any comments? Anyone? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? And motion is carried. And we go to the confirmation of the minutes of the Committee of the Whole budget session, January the 28th. And are there any noted errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Townend. Any comments? Never seconder, nobody, anybody else? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move forward to delegations and presentations. Oh, do we have the name for 7.2 before I go?
Not yet, your worship, but we can move it down to the lower on the agenda if you like.
Thank you. Can you remind me to come back to that when we get to the end of the agenda? Thank you.
I will.
Okay. And we move to delegations and presentations. First up, well, the only presentation scheduled for today, 8.1, the climate action presentation. And I believe Director Merritt is here to introduce it.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So while Mr. Masrani and Ms. Campbell are being moved over, I'll fill in the blanks or the void. So staff is extremely proud to present the climate action plan for endorsement by council this evening. This plan has been entirely developed in-house, including a significant public engagement piece, which is quite a feat considering that the COVID restrictions. This was truly a team effort and a great example of interdepartmental cooperation. So without further ado, Mr. Masrani, you can take it away.
All right, can everyone hear me to start with?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction, MJ, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm excited to be here to present our climate action plan to you tonight. So there is a presentation attached. It should be up on the screen right now. Can I get a quick thumbs up? Yes, perfect. So getting right into it as a little bit of background, council authorized the enrollment of Loyalist Township in the Partners for Climate Protection Program in October of 2017. In doing so, the township joined a network of over 350 municipalities across Canada that have committed to act on climate change. So the program follows a 5-milestone framework that requires the development of a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, setting reduction targets, and then the development and implementation of a plan to meet these targets. So on the screen, we can kind of see the timeline that we worked through to get to this point today. In October of 2019, we set our corporate reduction targets of 49% reduction below 2016 levels by 2031. In August of last year, council authorized staff to engage in public consultation to develop reduction targets, which were then determined and approved by council in November of 2020 for a 25% reduction in community greenhouse gas emissions below 2017 levels by 2031. Sorry, just that's better. So we're going to use 2016, 2017 as our reference here. So there's a number of reasons for this, mostly because the availability of data was a bit more conducive to actually getting a representative picture for those 2 years, but also because it coincided with the last census. So in 2016, what the average household in Loyalist Township actually looked like. So it's on your screen here. The average after-tax income was about $73,000 per year. 2.5 people lived in a household, consumed 700 liters of water per day, and generated almost 300 kilometers of waste per year. And then how do people get around? For the vast majority, they got around in a personal vehicle, which makes sense if we look at the density of a township like ours, which is urban rural. But then we did have about 3% of people who used active transit to commute, so walking, biking, running, etc., and then another 3% using public transit. So the diagram on the slide now summarizes the flow of greenhouse gas emissions in the community from their source. So anything from electricity, gasoline, diesel, or natural gas, for example, to their end use, such as buildings, transportation, landfills, etc. So the number in the black box line or dotted line is all the emissions in our community inventory. So it includes everything from residences, corporate emissions, heavy industry emissions, water, wastewater, and waste. And you'll notice that a significant portion of these can actually be attributed to the Lafarge cement plant in the village of Bath. So Lafarge, as a corporate worldwide entity, just recently announced their corporate greenhouse gas reduction efforts, which are going to be separate from what we're talking about today. So we're not really, so even though they are included in our inventory, we won't really be talking about them in this plan. And then the same can be said about the energy industry's emission, which take up a decent chunk of our inventory. 2016 was the last year that the Northland Power Generating Station in the Taylor Kidd Industrial Park was operational. So there were a few emissions associated there, but really since then, we haven't seen anything in that particular sector. So really what we're going to focus on is the sectors in the green box, which is waste, transportation, water, wastewater, municipal facility, and buildings. So the Climate Action Plan itself focuses on 6 priority sectors, which were developed in consultation with key stakeholders. So these included residents, but also township staff, local businesses, and the like. The goals and action presented in each of these sectors were created with the aim of obviously reducing our emissions locally, but we're also looking at how can we go beyond that and how can we actually improve environmental, economic, and social outcomes in the community, while obviously respecting or maintaining levels of service and respecting taxpayer dollars. So those were our goals and our guiding principles. Before I get into it, I will take this opportunity to remind Council that this Climate Action Plan is meant to span over a 10-year period. So some of the proposed goals and actions could be implemented as early as this year, but a good number of them will take a while to develop business cases and find partners. And frankly, some of the technology needed to achieve some of those goals are starting to emerge, but they're not quite available yet, but we fully expect that they will be over the course of this study period. So getting right into it, when we talked to people, what we heard right off the bat is that there was a lot of support for matters pertaining to sustainable land use in the community. So it makes sense if we look at the makeup of the township, some urban components, some rural components. So the theme of this sector really is meant to focus on ensuring that the housing and commercial needs of the community are met while still managing the finite amount of available space and available green space. So in essence, can we manage growth in Loyalist Township in a sustainable manner? The 8 goals presented in this category focus on taking care of nature and making it accessible to all, while looking to create resilient, low carbon communities. The rural-urban makeup of the township also presents an opportunity to work with local farmers to implement sustainable agricultural practices while promoting local foods, which is a topic that was really very highly favored by residents who participated in our engagement sessions. So we're not going to go through the goals one by one, but if you do have any questions on them, feel free to let me know. They are talked about in detail throughout the plan itself. Moving into the next category, solid waste. So addressing solid waste in the community was actually another very important theme that emerged from talking to the public. The goals in this sector focus on reducing the amount of waste being sent to landfill each year and actually trying to turn as much of it into a resource as possible. So in addition to reducing methane emissions, which is a very potent greenhouse gas that are generated when organic matter such as food decomposes, the goals presented in this sector will also help extend the life of landfills, which will delay the need for a new landfill or an expanded one. So there are some economic benefits to it as well. One thing that is worth noting here is that what we heard from residents is that there's a lot of support in the community for a green bin program. So goal number 9 is meant to try to address that need in the community while collaborating with the Public Works Division to find and develop a solution that would be suitable for Loyalist Township. Moving into the third priority sector, which was transportation, there's a few focus areas here. One is increasing the amount of transit and active transportation systems available to residents while keeping in mind that conventional systems may not be suitable for a municipality like Loyalist Township, right? So we can't necessarily assume that a fixed route bus system in Loyalist will work. Again, going back to that whole density comment from earlier. So that's one component of it. And the other one is trying to promote the number of low emission vehicles on the road or increase that number. So this could be accomplished by installing pay-per-use electric vehicle charging stations across Loyalist to facilitate the adoption of these vehicles in the community. And then also by gradually converting the municipal fleet as part of life cycle replacement activities. We are seeing a lot of investments from the major automotive manufacturers in increasing the availability of electric vehicles and making them more affordable. So we are seeing the industry shifting towards these trends. So what we're proposing here is just to facilitate the adoption of electric vehicles by having pay-per-use charging stations across the township, and then also replacing the fleet gradually. Fourth sector is the building sector. So really, this actually presents one of the biggest opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the community while improving socioeconomic outcomes. So the focus here is to reduce energy consumption in the existing commercial and residential building stock while working with developers to increase the efficiency of new construction. So if I could actually direct your attention to the 2 figures at the bottom of the slide, we can note that the average household energy bill is almost $3,000 per year. So that's just energy, it's not water. And 13% of households in the community actually spend over 10% of their after-tax income on energy costs, which is pretty substantial if you think about it. So by prioritizing older dwellings as well as low-income households and trying to help them reduce their energy costs, there's a significant opportunity here to help, frankly, a very vulnerable segment of the community while contributing to a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, the goals in this sector can also apply to municipal facilities. So how can we reduce energy consumption in municipal buildings, which will lead to a reduction in operating costs. Moving into our next sector, which is water and wastewater. So this sector in itself may not represent a huge opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Loyalist. It's frankly less than 0.5%, but we felt that it was important to include it all the same. There's 3 areas of focus here: reducing the amount of water losses in the drinking water system and the amount of inflow and infiltration into the sewer system, working with residents to reduce per capita water usage, and increasing the efficiency of mechanical systems in treatment plants and distribution systems and collection systems. So as well as looking for opportunities to capture and reuse waste energy. So again, these goals might not have a sizable impact on emissions in the community, but they do have the potential to reduce operating expenses associated with treating and moving water, which is very energy intensive as a process. And then if we look at decreased residential consumption, we could look at helping residents reduce the portion of their utility bills that are based on consumption. And then really in the long term, if we can demonstrate that per capita water usage rates are decreasing over time, we can actually delay the need for water and wastewater plant expansions or just infrastructure expansions, which in themselves are extremely expensive and time consuming as well. So there are several benefits associated with this sector beyond just minimal reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And then finally, the 6th sector, so other, it's a bit of a catch-all. we felt that it was important to include a sector by itself to capture the initiatives that, again, won't necessarily have a quantifiable effect on greenhouse gas emissions reductions in the community, but that will contribute to developing a culture of climate action. So the focus here is to just facilitate the dialogue with between the municipality and residents and other stakeholders. How can the township empower residents to take action on climate change while improving local outcomes? Can the township leverage opportunities to advance science by collaborating with local academic institutions and local industry? And really, what can we as a municipal government do to facilitate climate action in the community? So we've already received a fair amount of support from local organizations and have previously worked with the local college, St. Lawrence College and Queen's University on several successful initiatives. So these goals really are about strengthening these relationships and building new ones. Overall, these initiatives have the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 16% below 2016 levels by 2031. And then once we account for the efforts of Lafarge, again, we can't really influence them, but they are part of inventory. This number goes up to 25%, which is the stated goal of this plan. If we think back to one of the earlier slides, and the corporate inventory is about, or the corporate reduction target is 49% below 2016 levels. The corporate emissions relative to our community emissions as a whole are a very small percentage. So really the community emission reduction target is what drives this number forward more so. So that's just a little bit of background there. So again, this is our target for 2031, or what council already endorsed for 2031. But the consensus in the scientific community appears to be that the world really needs to move towards net zero emissions by 2050 to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. So the federal government's already endorsed this target. So as we work our way through this plan, there will likely need to be updates and more aggressive targets over time, but this really is a first step. I mean, we can talk about numbers and targets all we want, but ultimately the actions and recommendations of this plan are actually going to contribute to meeting these targets. But more importantly, it also presents an opportunity to improve a number of environmental, economic, and social outcomes in the community while building towards a more resilient Loyalist Township. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions you might have. I will stop sharing my screen, but I can come back to it if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzarani. Right. Council, do we have any questions for any of the three staff present for this? I see no questions. Right. I will say thank you very much, Mr. Mazzarani, Ms. Campbell, and Ms. Merritt. You've done an excellent job in preparing this, and I know there's been a ton of work gone into the background studies and the public communication to ensure that this is targets that we can achieve, targets that are rather lofty in all honesty, but it's still quite possible and to the benefit of everyone within the township. So thank you very much. I'll once again ask if there are any questions, any comments. Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive the presentation then? Councillor Townend, so moved? Or is that a question?
No, to receive the presentation and adopt the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Buderick. Thank you. Right. Any further comments? Councillor Townend, go ahead.
I sure do. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to give a bit of a speech. It's not very long, but bear with me. Thomas Berry once said, "We are not lacking in the dynamic forces needed to create the future. We live immersed in a sea of energy beyond all comprehension. But this energy, in an ultimate sense, is not ours by domination, but by invocation." And I really think this quote fittingly conveys the sentiment that accompanies my pledge to the direction Loyalist proposes to undertake in this action plan. It's been a privilege of mine to witness some of the finest, most skilled, talented, and altruistic individuals as yet I have met working on this project. And in particular, to thank Rami Mazzarani, Jenna Campbell, Claire Ellison, Daniel Hendry, Bailey Labatt, Dave Thompson and Marie-Josée Merritt. This climate action plan is the product, as the mayor said, of countless hours of dedicated work, but also unprecedented community engagement in the context of our municipality. It's more than simply an exemplary report, and it is that. It's more than merely a functional extension of our strategic goals. It is really an imaginative, creative, optimistic, and realistic vote of confidence in the future of our municipality and the generations to come that will call it home. Loyalist is beyond fortunate, in my view, to have this climate action plan, which is a map toward a progressive, sustainable, and resilient future in the face of undoubted existential crisis. So it's my pleasure to commend this report and plan to my council colleagues, and I urge them to embrace sharing in this momentous occasion of committed endeavor toward brighter promise for Loyalist Township.
Thank you, Mr. Townend. Are there other comments from council? Seeing none, I will add a little bit. I mentioned our staff and the work that was done on this before and greatly appreciate it. I do need to add a final note of thanks to Councillor Townend, who participated within the Climate Action Committee and certainly added his great mind to that work. So thank you very much. With that, if there's no further comments, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. And we move forward. Thank you very much, Mr. Masrani, Ms. Campbell, and Ms. Merritt. Unfinished business, none. We move to item 11.1, pandemic financial relief considerations. We have a report before us from Mr. Dickey, I believe. Mr. Dickey, do you have anything to add to this report at this time?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Nothing further to what's in the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Council, do we have any questions with regard to the report? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
I'm just wondering how much we're charging in penalties and interest on late tax payments. Like, is there a percentage?
Director Dickey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The bylaw reflects a 1.25% per month on late charges.
That applies to both utility and taxes?
No, that's for taxes.
Okay.
Utilities, sure off the top of my head, the utilities is, I think it's a, I should know this off the top of my head, but I think it's a 3%, 3.5% after, no, I guess I don't know the amount of off the top of my head on utilities.
Understood. Thank you. Councillor Porter, anything further?
Yeah, so essentially the interest that we're charging on late taxes is 15% per year. And is that compounded monthly, or is that just a straight 15% per year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is compounded on the outstanding balances.
Monthly,
each month. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably up to almost, 25, 30% per year then. And how much do we pay for our money when we borrow?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the long-term rates are right now are about 3.5%. Our debt ranges between 3.5% and 5% for the debt that we have outstanding
per year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to follow through on that line of questioning, I'm just wondering, instead of giving relief through an extension, if we may give relief, reduce temporarily the interest rates until this pandemic, or until such time that the pandemic is over, for those that are late on paying their taxes, not charge so much. I mean, we still have to charge enough to cover our costs of carrying it, but not, I don't think it's fair, especially in this day and age right now, what's happening, to make money off the late payers. And that's essentially, we're making about 20%, 25%, somewhere in that range. I didn't calculate it, obviously, but I'm just wondering if that might be an option we could consider.
Anyone else have comment or question? And I'll go to the deputy.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Dickey. Just following along that Councillor Porter's questions. The interest rate, it would also not only the interest rate that the township would pay on borrowed money, but is that also to cover like things like postage and additional staff time and things to send out reminders and carry it on the books? Is it all included in that interest rate? Or sorry, penalty rate?
Through Mr. Mayor, those monies do go to cover costs. Typically the way the bylaws are set up is they're intended to be, they're not really intended to be financing rates for taxpayers. They're intended to be just like they're similar to what would be on your utility bills or some credit cards. They're intended to not to encourage people to use these use these funds to finance their own other expenditures. They're intended to be to encourage people to pay them on time. But those revenues do flow through our general budget to offset other costs as well.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? And I'm seeing none. I would look for a motion. We do have recommendations, and I note that there is an or in the recommendations. And I'll go to the deputy.
I would move to receive the report and adopt recommendation number option 2.
I'll take that as a motion. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Parks, thank you. And move or comment?
Just briefly, thank you. I think it would be prudent for us to try. We recognize that there are a lot of people that are greatly impacted right now with the current lockdown situation. Thankful for the announcement today, but I think this would give people a chance to get back to work and be able to get the income flowing again before the interest or the penalties were incurred. So, and if needed, depending on how the situation is, council can always revisit this at any time.
Thank you. Seconder, do you have a comment? Councillor Parks?
Just wanted to basically echo what Deputy Mayor or Deputy Hagedorn has said in regards to people getting back to work and giving them a little bit of a break until we see some movement on people getting back to work. So
Thank you. Other comments? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried unanimously.
Follow-up motion, Your Worship?
Follow-up motion for Councillor Porter. Go ahead.
Yes, I move that should another lockdown occur, that we revisit the financial relief as soon as practical after the lockdown is announced.
Does staff have clarity on the motion?
Yes.
We do. I'll accept the motion. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Buderick, thank you. Mover comment?
It's just with so much uncertainty out there, we don't really know if things are going to get back to business. And last time we were all very optimistic and hopeful, and was so glad that things had reopened. And then, subsequent to that, then the lockdown occurred again. And should that happen again, I think we need to be in a position to react quickly and look at what we can do. And act quickly, that's all.
Thank you. Seconder, any comment? No? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we can move forward. Item 12.1, and Community and Customer Service Department status update on the resumption of ferry fares. We have a report before us, and I believe Ms. McFarland is in the audience. And Ms. McFarland, would you like to comment on the report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the only addition that didn't get into the report was that we did have a ferry committee meeting late last week. And we discussed the collection of ferry fares and the work that we've done to try and determine a few different electronic systems. And through the discussion, it was decided that it would be best if we could resume fares as close to our normal collection process as possible, adding in all of the extra protective wear, and then continue with our investigation, including public engagement, as there we will need some other assistance and information regarding which way to go for electronic fare collection.
Thank you very much. Council, you have the report before you. Do you have any questions or comments for the director? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, to the director. In the report, you proposed that the motorcycle and bicycle fares continue to be suspended. Do you have is there any kind of date in mind? Suspended until when, like indefinitely, or for a few months, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our thought process with that is right now we are not receiving many bicycles and motorcycles on the ferry, and it is change collection for those fares. We had wanted to have some time to get the point of sale or the electronic debit machine utilized so that staff would get used to using that. And we're hoping that that gives us enough time to actually have our public consultation and look at our the electronic process that we're planning to implement.
Okay, Councilor
And
Porter.
just one other question, and excuse my ignorance on this, I probably should know this, but walk-on fares, do they pay? Or is there so few that, is that a free?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, walk-on is a free, there's no payment for walk-on.
Thank you. Any other questions with regards to this report? Seeing none, we do have a recommendation to receive for information. And do I have a mover? Councillor Townend, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Thank you. Right. Mover, any comment? Seconder, any comment? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Going forward, we move to item 14.1, Mill Creek Living Subdivision Phase 1, Stage 1, Lots 5, 6, 10, and 12 part lot control request. We have a report before us, and I see the director is here. And Ms. Merritt, do you have anything to add to this report at this time?
Nothing to add, your worship.
And thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to this report? Seeing none, right, I look for a motion. Councillor Buderick, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. And mover comment? Seconder? Anyone else? I'll call the question then. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to item 14.2, request for road closing on Emma Street. Again, we have a report before us and the director is here to speak to it. Right. Ms. Merritt, do you have anything to add to this report at this time?
Yes, your worship, thank you. So staff wanted to make sure council was aware that we received some correspondence today from the applicant. In considering the correspondence, staff noticed that we should slightly change the recommendation to bring some clarification. But before I get to this, the concern is with the policy to circulate the proposal to all benefiting landowners, as they would be entitled to make an offer to acquire a portion of the land. The applicant raised a good point, as in the specific case, if the road allowance was to be split 50-50, it would be difficult for staff to support certain type of developments for such a narrow frontage. But we can't ignore that 50% of that road allowance to the north lot would provide the benefit for future development for this lot if the owner was interested. So this is a unique parcel of land, and this request offers some interesting challenges for sure. What we are asking of council is to provide direction with respect to closing of the road. If this request is supported, staff can then proceed with the circulation. Based on each owner's interest, this could have a different outcome. For example, staff could not support 100% of the road allowance being sold to the north property, as this would landlock the L-shaped property. So that's why it's a little bit complicated. So as we looked at the recommendation, we feel that we need to make a slight change to it. So I don't know if Ms. Chapman, I wonder if you could bring up what we're proposing on the screen. So basically what we're looking at is merging recommendation 3 and 4 together, because this was not meant for council to decide between recommendation 3 or 4. So go 50-50 or go 100% to one landowner. This will really depend on the interest of all the landowner abutting the road allowance.
Okay.
Does that?
And just making sure, I can see down to the bottom line that says full property value of the subject land being acquired. Is that the bottom line, or is there more to that screen? It is.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
And
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that adjusted recommendation from the staff, council, do we have any questions with regards to this? I see no questions. And then I look for a motion. Deputy, go ahead.
Move to receive and adopt the recommendation
And the new recommendation.
as provided tonight.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Buderick, thank you. And mover, any comment? No? Seconder, any comment? And other members of council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we move forward to item 14.3, the Heritage Committee meetings, December 9th and January 26th. We have the report, some recommendations. I believe there's 4. Okay. Do we have any, sorry, Ms. Merritt, do you have anything to add to this report at this time?
No further comment, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to the report? I see none. And I'll look for a motion. Councillor Townend, so moved. Seconded by Councillor Porter. Okay. Mover, any comment? Seconder comment.
Just a question with the resignation of one of the Heritage Committee members, does that put the committee down to a still a sustainable level of members?
Madam Director?
Through you, your worship. No, that will bring down the numbers to 6, and there's no minimum in that committee, so we wouldn't need to re-advertise to fill that position.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions with the report? Comments? And mover and seconder have spoke. Is there any other comment? Councillor Parks, go ahead.
Hi, I won't be supporting this at this point. I don't believe that recommendation number 2 requiring the owners to have the designated plaque on the property is necessary.
Understood. Other comments? And with that, I go back to the mover. Final comment?
Just to be clear, I do support the second recommendation. This is grant money. It's that if people are receiving grant money and getting their heritage designation, all they have to do is put up a plaque that the township would provide. I don't think that's a very difficult ask, but I think it's an important one given the nature of what the program of those plaques is intended to do. So this is something that the committee has been very strong in continuing to put back to council.
Thank you. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. 2, 3. Opposed? And then with 3 and 3, I cast the deciding ballot and I will vote in favor. Motion is carried. And we move forward to item 14.4, assumption of works for Lakeside Village Phase 7, Stage 2A. Again, we have a report before us. Ms. Merritt, is there anything to add to this report?
No, your worship.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to the report? Seeing none, I look for a motion. Councillor Porter, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parks, thank you. Right. Any comments from the mover? Seconder? Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We move to item 14.5, Lakeside Village Phase 7, Stage 2D. Madam Director, do we have any further comment?
No, your worship.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions? Seeing none, do I have a mover? Deputy, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Thank you. Any comments? Mover, seconder, anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. 14.6, assumption of work for Loyalist Estates Phase 6, Stage 2. We have a report before us. Madam Director, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add, your worship.
Thank you. Questions with regard to the report? Seeing none, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Porter, so moved. Councillor Gordon, second. Thank you. Mover comment? Seconder comment? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is carried. Thank you. We go to 14.7, assumption of works for Loyalist Estates Phase 7. Again, we have a report from the director. Any comments, Madam Director?
Nothing to add, your worship.
Thank you. Any questions with regards to this report? Seeing none, can I get a motion? I'll go with Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Mover comment? Seconder? Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. I think that takes you off the hook, Madam Merritt. We go to 15.1, Emergency Services Department. We have the 2020 Emergency Services Year-End Report. I believe we have the chief with us if there's any questions. Okay. We have the report before us. Do you have anything to add to this at this time, Chief?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to the chief. It's noted here that due to the pandemic and everything, there's been a reduction in training, which everyone knew was happening. Is there any chatter from the province that that will be an issue, or is this something that's expected? It's well, it's probably worldwide, but it's province-wide for sure. Is there any discussion about any makeup training that they're going to require, or is it just silent?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor, at this point in time, it has been very, very silent. Fire departments were exempt. We could have continued training, but most departments stopped, just to err on the side of caution for their staff. We have been back training virtually for the last 5 weeks. We did quite a bit last year too, and starting next week in small groups of 10 or less, we will be going back to in-person training. And we will continue that as long as we can safely do so. But there's been nothing from the province on where you're not going to be in compliance or whatever. They just told us to do what we felt comfortable with. So.
Thank you. And I understood why it happened.
Any other questions for the chief? And then, Chief, actually, I had a question on the last table of the report. Was regarding total calls, injuries, both firefighter and civilian. I'm noticing a lot of zeros in the civilian, and we know that there were situations involving fatalities earlier this year or late last year. Am I missing something with this report?
No, Your Worship. Fatalities are reported not by the fire department. They're reported specifically by the province, so they don't show in our actual report. Fire fatalities in the province of Ontario are a responsibility of the coroner to report. So,
understood. Thank you. That explains it. Any other questions? And we have the report before us. Do we have a motion? I believe it's just to receive for information is the recommendation. Deputy, so moved. Seconded by Councillor Porter. Thank you. Any comments, Deputy? Councillor Porter? Anyone else? Seeing none, I always take this opportunity to express this council's appreciation, my personal appreciation for the efforts of all of our emergency services department, the volunteers, the part-time firefighters, all of the full-time firefighters, and under your leadership, Chief, you do a great job, and we greatly appreciate the efforts of your department. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
With that, I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor, please show a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Up next is 15.2, designation of fire routes. Chief, we have the report before council. We have the report before us. Chief, do you have any comments?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for the chief with regard to this report? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Chief Stevenson. In the Schedule A to the bylaw, how many of these are new? These fire routes are many of them new, or have they?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Porter. There are none of them that are actually new, but most of them have never been actually enforced and some have never been signed. But when they were all built, the fire routes were designated. It's been part of the building code forever. It's just they haven't been maintained properly, unfortunately. And although we have tried to maintain them without them actually being in the bylaw, it was very hard for us to force the owners to do the proper signage.
So some of the residents then on these routes are going to see new no parking signs come up then. Is that what I'm hearing? Am I understanding that correctly?
Through your worship to Councilor Porter, yes, you will see us have to do some additional signage, and some of the owners will be responsible for some of their signage, similar to like the schools are responsible to have their fire routes posted. Over the years, some of the fire route signs have just come down because they've become rusty or they weren't visible any longer.
Thank you.
Any other questions with regard to this report for the chief? Seeing none, do I have a mover, please? Councilor Porter, so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Parks. And mover comment? Seconder comment? Anyone else have comment? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move into communications for consideration. 16.1 census coming up May 2021. And I'm sure you've all seen the letter. Council, what would you like to do with this? Deputy, go ahead.
Receive and support.
And so moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Buderick. And Deputy, comments?
Just briefly, I think it's something that we can do with virtually no cost. Helping get the word out to fill out your census is something that we can easily partner with, and it'll be beneficial to us in the long run as well.
Absolutely. Seconder comment?
Just agree with everything the deputy said.
Thank you. Anyone else have comment? I will add that one of the thoughts expressed is the concern that these days there's a lot of scamming going on, and the more endorsement we can provide for the official, the proper census, the better off. Hopefully our residents are well informed and can utilize that census material. Okay. With that, if there's no further comment, Councillor Porter, go ahead.
It's more of a question, and you probably is rhetorical, really. Probably you don't know the answer to that, but I note that they're saying they're going to hire 32,000 people, and hopefully some are hired from our municipality.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Call the question. All those in favor, raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Next up, 16.2. We have a letter from Ms. Gavlis. Council, what would you like to do with this? Councillor Townend, go ahead.
I have a motion, Your Worship.
Great.
I move that council provide direction to staff that during anticipated public consultation and formal development discussions for the recently purchased parcel of land on Amherst Island, that Mrs. Gavlis and the Amherst Island Medical Clinic be included in such discussions with a view to accommodating a thorough public presentation of this proposal.
Take that motion. Okay. Does the clerk have clarity on the motion?
Councillor Townend, I'm sure will provide us the wording. It would be if the rest of council is familiar with it.
Council, do I have?
Sorry, excuse me.
Go ahead, Councillor Porter.
Just may I ask, would Councillor Townend please repeat the motion. He broke out and I didn't.
Thank you, Councillor Townend, go ahead.
Yep. Can you still hear me? I guess I'm.
We can hear you.
Yep. I move that council provide direction to staff that during anticipated public consultation and formal development discussions for the recently purchased parcel of land on Amherst Island, that Mrs. Gavalis and the Amherst Island Medical Clinic be included in such discussions with a view to accommodating a thorough public presentation of this proposal. And I
Does
can speak
council
to the
have
motion if
clarity
I get a
on the
second.
motion? Councillor Parks?
Just looking for some clarity through your worship to Councillor Townend. So you're asking for the committee to be involved in any development process of this land?
So inevitably, when council made the decision to purchase that land, it's with a view to having some public input on the future development of the village of Stella. And so by necessity and in point of principle, that needs to be through a public consultation process. Mrs. Gavalis has presented a very worthwhile proposal, and she's already brought this to the awareness of staff, including as far as designs, etc. And this organization has been incorporated as a not-for-profit. It is a very good potential idea, one that in principle I certainly support. So the motion just speaks to when staff are preparing to engage the public on what to do with that land, that the medical clinic be included in what gets presented to the public for potential options for what happens with that land.
Do we have clarity on the motion? Did I get a seconder yet? It's a member of council wishing to second that motion. The deputy, thank you. And mover, did you have further to speak to it as first? Seconder, would you like to speak to it?
No, once it was clarified, I agree. We should be looking at all options for the property, and this is one that should be included when we're doing the full review.
Thank you. Further comment from council? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item number 16.3, Amherst Island Women's Institute, a request for an advertisement. Council, what would you like to do with this one? Councilor Porter, go ahead. We can't hear you, Councilor Porter.
My apologies. Move to receive the correspondence and approve the request.
So moved. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Gordon, thank you. Councilor Porter, would you like to speak to it?
No, I just believe it is a worthy community organization that should be supported.
Thank you. Seconder comment? Nothing? Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And 16.4, Mr. McConnell from Office of Local 317. Have a request. Council, what would you like to do with that? Anyone? I'll go with council. We'll go with the deputy.
Sorry, is it appropriate to pose a question at this time through you to the chief?
Go ahead.
If the chief is still available, can hear me. Does the closing of the fire college, I know it's it's a great resource for the province, but is it going to greatly impact our ability for training? And I have heard in this, and I've heard rhetorically, it's going to add a lot of cost to training with the municipalities just because of the economic fees that were charged there.
Through you, your worship, to the deputy mayor, the closing of the fire college will not have that big of an impact on Loyalist Township, mainly because we're very fortunate to have a fire training center as the caliber that we do. And for a lot of years, our training center was a regional training center that they list in this letter. I was involved with the Training Officers Association for many years, and 10 or 12 years ago, we knew that the college was not going to be sustainable. Loyalist Township sends firefighters to the college for a week. They get 5 days of training, they get room and board, and it costs the municipality $65. We knew it was never going to be sustainable, yet they seem to refuse to try to come up with a figure that would make it sustainable. It was almost like they wanted it to fail. So unfortunately, that's been going on up there for years. It would have been nice to see them come up with a business model and present it to the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, the Ontario Association of Fire Training Officers, the Ontario Fire Prevention Officers Association, all the big associations that use this facility. The college is pretty well to maximum capacity every week of the year. So the courses there is a need for the courses up there, but I totally agree that it's $65 a firefighter. It's a good bargain. It's been a great bargain for our municipality, but it was not going to be sustainable for that long.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for the chief while he's here? Councillor Porter, go ahead. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes, I had the same line of question as our deputy mayor did as far as what your thoughts were. But further to what you said, was the Ontario Fire College, I presume then that it was fully funded by the province. Do you know if that was the case?
Through your worship to Councillor Porter, yes, it was totally funded by the province. The $65 was supposed to be a nominal fee that we paid for consumable products like textbooks and stuff like that was handed out. But the cost of your room and board, the instructors' costs, as well as the facility, which is on Lake Muskoka, it's a beautiful facility. But anyways, it was totally funded by the Ontario government.
Thank you. Any others wish to have a question? Seeing none, I do look for a motion. Deputy, go ahead.
Move to receive.
Move to receive only. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Parks, thank you. Deputy, would you like to make comment?
Just personally, I hate to see this happen. I've been there several times, receiving and giving training, and it's a phenomenal place to go. But it's not sustainable, and I'm looking at this from the township's point of view. If it's not going to greatly impact the township, then it's receive only.
Thank you. Seconder, comment?
Sorry, I think the deputy covered it all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion. I think if this was something that was fully funded by the province, it gave us some benefit. We're able to send firefighters there at the provincial cost for $65 a week. I think that was a great bargain. The province, as you know, has downloaded costs to municipalities. And this is just one minor way of taking back from the province. And I think that in my mind, I would have supported their request or supported their request to the province to keep it open and not close it.
Understood. Thank you. Other comments? Back to the mover. Do you have further comment? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of those. We go to notices of motion or direct motion. Council, do we have anything for notice of motion or direct motion this evening? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to bring forward a direct motion due to time.
And the clerk has clarified my processes on this, and I understand I need to know the nature of the motion, and I will ask for a vote of council to determine if it is deemed to be direct.
Okay.
Can you
Is that preferred that I read the
if you would,
motion or proposed motion then so that people understand what
And-
thought is?
please do so.
Okay. So the proposed motion would be, I would move Loyalist Township agree in principle with TAPMO request for $2,100 financial commitment to engage upstream strategy group to open communication with provincial government regarding assessment inequities of aggregate production properties.
That's the motion. In order to determine, Madam Clerk, do I seek a seconder for the motion so that the deputy can explain it and then seek direction from council with regards to direct or notice?
Through your worship, it would be a matter of whether that's enough information for the members of council to feel that it would be, I guess the deputy mayor could say the timing part of it of why it would be direct versus notice. And then there would just be a vote as to, or show of hands of 2/3 that agree that it would be a direct motion because of the timing.
Thank you. I will ask the deputy mayor to express the information about the letter of request and the timing.
Thank you. The letter, this is a short turnaround request from TAPMO, and there has to be a decision made by TAPMO by the end of the month. So the deadline for response is the 24th. So the timing falls in between now and then. We won't have another council meeting to make the decision. And that's why I'm bringing it forward as a direct motion instead of a notice of motion.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions with regard to the timing or the process that we're about to go through? No. There has been a request for a direct motion, right? I will call the question. Does council approve it to be a direct motion? Do I need a mover for that, Madam Clerk? No, I don't need a mover, so I will simply ask for a vote. All those in favor of this being a direct motion? And I see unanimity. I don't need to call for opposed. And mover, you have put forward a motion. And do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Porter, thank you. Deputy, would you like to go ahead and explain your motion?
Yes. Otherwise, no one's going to realize why I made it. There was a letter that was just sent out today to the municipalities, but I don't think it's been distributed to all of council yet. So I'll just briefly try to summarize it. When property that's owned by aggregate producers is currently assessed at a Class 5 farmland, and that's provincially. So even in the GTA or the Golden Horseshoe, that's the way it is. With only the actual production area being assessed by something other than farmland. TAPMO, the top aggregate producing municipalities of Ontario, have brought this to the province whenever they can, whenever they have the opportunity. And now TAPMO is looking at if there's enough support financially to engage upstream to assist and facilitate discussion with the province and any associated agencies, and ultimately develop a assessment class for MPAC for quarries and pits other than Class 5 farmland. So in our case, any area there can be a large quarry, any area that's not actively being worked is class 5 farmland. So if there was a class other than that, not necessarily go all the way to industrial, but something that would bring it more in line, even with residential, then it would be a benefit to the municipality. And I guess the way I was looking at this is it sort of falls in with our strategic plan where we're looking to diversify our tax base and include more industry in our tax base to help with the residential taxation. So that's the synopsis there. And I'd be willing to answer any questions I can if they come up during the discussion.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions for the deputy as a representative of TAPMO for this? Seeing none. Seconder, did you have comment?
No, just that I concur with what Deputy Mayor has indicated. It's not the most appropriate designation for an aggregate as to be designated farmland.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll go back to the mover for final comment.
I think I got it summed up.
Okay. Thank you. And then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Are there any other notices of motion or direct motion? Seeing none, we move to the consent agenda. For the purposes of convenience and for expediting meetings, matters of business that are repetitive or routine in nature are included in the consent agenda, and all such matters of business contained in the consent agenda are voted on collectively. A particular matter of business may be singled out from the consent agenda for debate or separate vote upon the request of any member of council. In the case of a separate vote, the excluded matter of business is severed from the consent agenda. Each and every matter of business contained in the consent agenda is recorded separately in the minutes of the meeting. Is there anything from council that we wish to separate from the consent agenda? Councillor Porter.
Yes, I'd like to separate 21.1, 21.2, 21.8, 21.9, 21.14.
Can I ask you to slow down a little bit, Councillor Porter? 21.1, 21.2,
21.8, 21.9,
9,
21.14,
14,
21.17,
17,
and 22.3, and they will all be quick, I promise you.
22.3. Thank you. Does any other member of council wish to separate any other item? Seeing none, can I get a motion for the matters in the consent agenda other than those that have been excluded? Councillor Townend, seconded by the deputy. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to item 21.1. We have the report before us. And Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Just moved to receive and support. Can I do a few together or?
And if there's several, the clerk's nodding, I think. Go ahead, Councillor
Yes.
Porter.
21.1 and 21.2, I move to receive and support.
And seconded by, is that a second, deputy? Thank you. Right. So moved, Councillor Porter, you wish to speak to it?
No, other than we really need to look at what we're being charged for insurance and something needs to be done, so.
Absolutely. Seconder comment?
I was going to pull that out myself as well. I think we just need to keep the pressure on, keep it aware. And also the municipality that this is coming from, it would have a huge impact on it. So it's great to support the ones that are bringing it forward.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried for 21 and 22 to receive and support. Item 21.8. Councillor Porter, you wish to speak to it? or make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move to receive 21.8 and 21.9. Move to receive and support the resolutions.
Receive and support. Is that Councillor Budek, you're seconding those two? Thank you. All right. Councillor Porter, would you like to speak to 21.8 and 21.9?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to show support for small business, particularly in our community and other communities, and just show some solidarity with those municipalities that are requesting this.
Thank you. Councillor Budek?
Totally agree with Councillor Porter. We need to support our local businesses as well as support them with their initiatives as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Deputy, go ahead.
I agree with both those comments, and just a side note that when I've been into our local small businesses, I see them following protocols tighter than what a lot of the larger ones are. I can go into the hardware store and it's me and a couple other people, and so I think they can do it safely, and they can service the community, and so I fully support it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Back to the mover. And then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. That's 28 and 21, 8 and 9. Next up is 21, 14. And I'll go to Councillor Porter. Go ahead.
Yes, move to receive and support.
Receive and support for 21, 14. Do I have a seconder for that one? Councillor Gordon? Thank you. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes, I think we've done a resolution similar to that in the past and asked for support, and I think it's it's very important that we assist municipal clerks in addressing all the issues that come with their vital responsibility during election time. As well, we must be absolutely confident and 100% sure that our elections are fair, safe, and secure.
Absolutely. Seconder, Councillor Gordon, did you have comment? No? Okay. Anyone else have comment on this one? No, seeing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We go to 2117, Township of Augusta. Back to the Fire College. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes, move to receive and support, and I really hope I get a seconder so I can just give my little tirade again.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. So moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Gordon. So moved. Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gordon, for seconding that. Yeah, I mean, I said it before. I had this already pulled out earlier on my list before we address that letter. But I really think, again, it's very important. It's not costing us anything to have this stay open. Why wouldn't we want it open? As I said, it is a service. It is somewhat of a benefit. I know that the chief said that it's not going to impact us greatly, but that may be so. But it's also something that does provide a community service and does provide some training to us. That sounds like it's pretty close to free training. So I don't see the harm in at least asking for it to stay open.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Gordon, do you have comment? No? Anyone else have comment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion is lost. And
you can't blame me for trying.
Nope. And we go to 22.3. We have a report before us. Okay. Councillor Porter, you wish to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move to receive the report, and I'd like to give a shout out to Mr. Paul McCauley. Not only did he not claim any expenses whatsoever, but he was the only one he was one of the 2 people that had 100% attendance. So kudos to him, and thank you very much to Mr. McCauley.
And thank you. So moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Townend. Thank you. And Councillor Porter, is there anything to add? Seconder, anything to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, just to further, congratulations actually to Mr. McCauley, who at the recent AGM of CRCA has been appointed the vice chair of CRCA. So Loyalist Township is well represented at the table at CRCA.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other comments? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. That's the items extracted. We move to members' privilege. Does any member of council wish to speak under members' privilege? Councillor Gordon, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to update everyone. I got a call from Lisa at the Sharing Center, and she was a little concerned that the program, the people that run the program of the Lionhearts program were not, I guess, seemed to be fading a bit on her and not communicating very well. Our staff did reach out to them. There is no problem. So happy to say that they're going to continue on for a number of months or whatever. And if you can believe this, Amherst-View has now served over 40,000 meals since the program started. So pretty impressive. And I often I've stopped in there a few times, and it's a lot of the same workers there night after night and week after week. And now, of course, when it's colder and whatnot, but certainly hats off to those folks, and should be very proud of that group. So just wanted to let people know. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Is there anything else under members' privilege? Anyone? I see no hands. Upcoming meetings. We are scheduled for February the 22nd to have a committee of the whole with regard to the official plan. March the 1st, committee of adjustment. March the 1st, committee of the whole after committee of adjustment. And then March the 8th, the regular council. March 22nd, regular council. And again, it's noted that that March the 8th is the public meeting with regard to the budget. Okay. Is there anything else under scheduling that we need to address, Madam Clerk? Okay, then we come to the confirmatory bylaw.
Sorry.
Oh, Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Just wanted to go back to the minutes.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
So it was Councillor Budrick who moved it and Councillor Townend who seconded it.
That was 7.2 special council, and the item is 6.2, the confirmatory, moved by Councillor Budrick and seconded by Councillor Townend?
Yes.
Right? Yes. Okay, so
We'll
that
make
will be,
that amendment, and we'll mark it as amended.
can I get a motion to approve the minutes of that meeting as amended? Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Budrick. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please show of hands. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, and thank you for the reminder, Madam Clerk. Okay. So we come to the confirmatory bylaw. Did I already do that? No. Can I get a motion for the confirmatory bylaw, please? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Porter, thank you. Okay. Any comments? Let's call the question. All those in favor, please show a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. And I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Townend. Right. Call the question. All those in favor, please show hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. I thank everyone very much. Enjoy the winter weather we're having, and very pleased to hear that very shortly we will be back to green status. Take care, all.
Good night, everybody.